I go into the universities, they're teaching the kids things that I learned 15 years ago that are completely irrelevant. I walk into their class and go, here's what I'm doing.
On this episode, Head of Digital Construction, BDC, BIM, and Autodesk Expert Elite at Kane Group, Gary Cowan.
Using all of the technologies like reality capture allowed us to treat a building like a machine.
Getting the data easier to be used, I think, is the next big area for growth.
All of the registration and cleaning and classification now happens in the cloud by AI.
The movement of seeing those demands change to 3D and change to BIM.
Constructed completely off-site, come together like a very large Lego set.
Creates a level of detail and accuracy.
It could be 30 gigabytes for one floor of a 50-floor building. You know, there's always someone doing something better than you, so keep your ear to the ground and keep your eyes open.
Excited to have Gary on with us today. Thanks for jumping in and joining.
You're very welcome, Matt. Thanks for having me.
So, as always, you know, this podcast, we love talking about new technologies that are affecting the built environment, whether it be scanners or drones or, you know, there's a lot of people talking about the future of AI now impacting the built environment. And I think there's a few of those that we'll probably dig into with you and your role and your focus. But really, before we start in the technical, I love digging in a little bit of the career journey. So let's start with your story a little bit. What got you into this industry?
I'd have to say probably my own family, first of all. I have two older brothers who were kind of on the tools as such. My oldest brother is a carpenter or a joiner, as we call them here in the UK. So he's a lot older than I am as well. I think he's 16 years older than I am. So sort of growing up, I had this older brother who was very much hands-on with his tools and fixed everything. And my own father was pretty much like that as well, although he didn't actually work in the trades. But with a house full of boys, you know, if anything ever needed fixed or done, you know, there was a plenty of people in the house to lift a tool and do the work. So I always had an interest in building and construction. You know, I was doing stuff from a very young age with my older brother. On school holidays and stuff, I would have went and worked for him as joiner's mate, as we say here in the UK. So I would have been his gopher. I would have given him his tools and got all the materials. So quite a few summers as a youth spent working on commercial building sites and residential homes, doing joinery and woodworking, all up until I was about 18 or 19, and decided then that I would go down the engineering route. Just always had a passion for problem solving. When I was a kid, I always used to love doing puzzles and crosswords and really having to use my brain to work things out. So in school we did like a multi-tick test that sort of gave you an idea of your career and where you should really go. And when I did the ticker test thing, it came back either an architect or an engineer. And at that stage, it was 7 years studying to be an architect or 4 years to be an engineer. So I went with the engineer. And I'm quite glad I did as well. I've kind of fell into a nice groove in my career. So I spent 4 years attending university here in Northern Ireland at Queen's University Belfast, where I picked up a degree in manufacturing and mechanical engineering. There was no BIM degrees back then. You're talking I graduated in 2006 now, so almost 20 years from I've entered the industry. So it's actually hard to believe that much time has passed. But fresh out of university, straight into doing work, local companies here in Belfast. Really started out as a CAD technician more than anything, with zero experience. I fell into doing CAD design on my very first job after graduating for a local company called Red Sky, and sort of worked my way up through there with different opportunities. Sort of realized very early on that if I wanted to be a designer and I wanted to, you know, be successful in construction, I really had to try and get some hands-on experience, because having only a DIY and a experience from working at home, I really didn't understand complex M&E systems and how they were designed, how they were installed. So I made the decision very early on to sort of step away from the design and go onto the sites and spend a bit of time actually on building sites, learning the trade, learning that, you know, how these things are hung, how do you hang a duct, how do you hang a pipe, all the different fixtures, methods, how to commission a system, how to hand it over. So spent a few years, as I say, really learning the craft, learning the actual physical methods of building buildings and how construction actually works in the real life. And then as part of my role then, because I had a degree in design and I always had a design, every company that I worked for, even though I was maybe a contracts manager on site, you know, organising all the materials, organising the labour, making sure everything was going in okay, I was always pulled towards the design side because I had that design idea and design flair. So it was around about 2008 that I got involved in a rather large hospital project here in Northern Ireland, and that was where I was introduced to Revit, and that's where digital construction was really introduced to me. That was around about 2008, I would say, really, 2008, 2009, and I was hooked immediately. Just couldn't believe the system, couldn't believe the software, and went and got myself a copy off the internet and decided to go and draw any building that I could see. I drew my own house, drew my parents' house, went and lifted loads of old projects that I had kept over the years in CAD files and just started drawing absolutely everything I could get my hands on. And then again, just sort of batted around the industry. And then in around about 2012, I answered the call for Kane Group. They were looking for their very first BIM technician, and I applied for the job and got it back in 2012. So that really was the start of my digital construction career in the serious sense, and that when I came to Kane's, there was no established system. There was no BIM department. I was the very first BIM guy that was brought on board. So I was so fortunate to have a clean slate and a completely empty playing field to try and come up with all of the different systems and workflows and technologies that we now take for granted. And it was a fantastic 10 or 12 years of just discovery. And I was very, very fortunate to work for such a forward-thinking company and to have the trust of the directors who kind of seen this crazy guy coming in with all these wide ideas that had never been done in a lot of the places in the industry. And they took a chance with me, and thankfully it has been successful up to now.
That's awesome. So being the first person in that department means that it went really smooth and easy, right? Just knowing exactly where to start and what technology to pick and how it was gonna, the vision was just set, right? That's how it went.
Well, in an ideal, maybe in a Disney movie, yes, that's exactly what happened. But in reality, no, it was far from that. It was very much trial and error for a lot of the years. Different ideas, different concepts that we were coming up with, and just basically trial and error, having a go with it on site. Does it work? Does it not work? A constant cycle of looking at a technology, trying it in real world, kind of seeing what the results are and seeing does it actually make us any better, any faster. And quite a lot of the technologies have indeed done that. The reality capture system that we've implemented since 2016 was groundbreaking and really was for us. It allowed us to, it basically removes the building tolerance from the equation altogether. Kane Group have a good reputation in the industry in the UK and across Europe now for being sort of at the forefront of DFMA, as they call it now, the design for manufacture and assembly. We here in the UK, in Ireland, we call it prefab. It's prefabrication. That's the old terminology for it. But Kane's were always known for having a go at prefab. We would try it in the early days where we're very small scale prefabrication of, say, pump rigs or frames that held certain things. There was always that ethos in the background in Kane's that, sure, we can make this in the factory and we can do it a bit better. So once the BIM started really accelerating and we started to look at the digital models, not just as a coordination tool, but as an actual design and fabrication tool for our factories, all the sort of planets aligned with me. I think my degree and background in mechanical and manufacturing engineering really made me look at a building like a component, like I was designing a car or a machine. I was very used to working to very tight tolerances. And then when I walked into the building trade, I couldn't believe that it was such a wild tolerance on site, up to 2 inches allowed in places. And I was like, how the hell does that even work? How does that even function? It just didn't sit right with me at all. So my focus over the last 10, 12 years has been transforming BIM from a very loose process to a very finite, measured, accurate process, and using all of the technologies like reality capture, our precision setting out, total station technology, and a lot of the other things that we've brought in workflows, really has allowed us to almost treat a building like a machine and to design it and construct it completely off-site, then bring all the parts to site and put them together like a very large Lego set. And don't get me wrong, there are still issues, there's still problems, as there always is in construction, but on a comparativeness of, if I look back to 20 years ago when I first started in construction, it was a free-for-all. You know, there was an old adage here in the UK, and it was called first in, first up. So if you were the first guy on site, you had free run of the site, and anyone who came behind you had to suck eggs, basically, and work around you. But slowly over the last 10, 12 years, I have been working tirelessly to try and get rid of that attitude on sites, and to have everyone come onto my site and know that this building is actually built twice. We build it in the virtual sense first and do all of the mistakes and the head scratching and all of the decisions in the virtual model, where the cost is relatively low compared to doing the same problem solving live on site, when there's an army of men and women looking at you and waiting on your decision to progress to the next thing, and decisions can have huge cost implications and everything on site. So it's really looking at the whole building process from start to finish and changing it completely is what we've tried to do. The precision setting out system that I have developed in conjunction with Hexagon Leica it allows us to use the icon, which you guys probably know. I'm on a surveying channel, so you're going to see that I'm not a surveyor. I'm a built-in services engineer, and yet we use all of the surveying technologies that the surveyors do, and it's by design. Really, it was how I come up with the whole concept, being led by a couple of colleagues of mine who actually work for Hexagon Leica. The very first job that I ever took on that was the catalyst for all of this technology was the Claridge's Hotel that we did back in 2018, and it was a fully prefabricated job. We were not able to do any hotworks on site, and it was actually 6 stories below ground in a basement. So we actually went and reality captured the entire substructure, which was brand new to me back in 2018. I was aware of the technology, but had never used it, and was quite skeptical of it as well. I was like, I don't know if this is necessarily as accurate, or is there still that margin of error, like a slack line and a measuring tape. You know, I wasn't actually quite sure how accurate can we get that. And the very first time that we sent the surveying company in and they come back with the point cloud of the complete basement, I was absolutely blown away by the intricacy of the point cloud and how insanely accurate it actually was to use, and how much easier it was to use than the old school methods of saying, you know, that for us that site is actually across an ocean. We're in the island of Ireland, and we have to actually get on an airplane and fly across to London to see the site. So for all of our digital team to be able to walk around a digital twin of that site without leaving the office and have complete certainty that the entire backdrop of our MEP design was the actual site with all of the crooked beams and ripples in the floor and kinks in the walls. There was no surprises for anything that we were trying to design. And it kind of all went like clockwork.
Yeah. And it's you know, the technology has also created, like you just explained, it's created more detail. You know, a lot of times people just compare it to, you know, let's take scanning like you're talking about now. It's not just a replacement to the previous method, right? The previous method, you didn't get every little curve of the wall or the intricacies of errors, or you know, when you're historically going out there and pulling a tape and drawing it's a straight line and it's this long, it brings in so many more minute details that I think as we get to now looking at things like prefabrication, where some of the steel, you know, meetups need to be super tight, and it not only replaces what used to be, but it creates a level of detail and accuracy and a potential for what can be done because of some of those increases, far more than just that replacement of the old way. And yet, even if you compare it to just the replacement of the old way, people that maybe are newer to the technology have this hesitancy of, oh, it's so new and fancy, it's going to be way more expensive, and it's going to, cost so much and take all this effort. And, I'd love to hear some of your thought, but from what I've seen in the past, even if you just put, A and B together of the old way and the new way, that thought or fear of it being more expensive or scary because it's technical, it really ends up actually saving money or being faster on top of the additional benefits I think in most cases.
Yeah, I would totally agree. There's so many things that you don't even realize that it brings to the table until you actually implement it or even try it. A good example is that we were doing a job in London for a school, and we had sort of worked to a structural steel model that was produced by the consultant, and unbeknownst to us, the general contractor that was employed then to erect the steel decided to go off piste and redesign the entire steel frame in traditional 2D CAD. And the 3D model was never updated in line with it. So in particular areas where we were prefabricating large ductwork sections and heading towards a very big downstand beam, we had prefabricated all of our duct to set down and kick back up again. And then the first day I walked on the site and looked up and there was no beam. And I went to the steel guys and went, where's the beam? And they went, oh, we designed that beam out. It was done ages ago. And I was like, well, why was the model not updated? And they said, oh, well, sure, who's going to pay the consultant? And at that stage, it was in the UK under the BS 119, it was classified as a BIM level 2 job. So the model was supposed to be a digital twin. It was supposed to be an exact representation. So there was a very heated conversation that day with the main contractor and the consultant, and to say, look, we now have we've doubted this entire building. I am now going to have to survey this entire building to see where this has changed, and we're going to have to start rejigging and redesigning, and it got into a very bad argument with the people at the time. But if we had had that technology at the time, to scan that entire building probably would have took 2 days. Yeah. Whereas if you tried to walk around it with a set of drawings, it probably would have took you 3 weeks, and probably at least 2 or 3 people. So timescale is one huge impact that allows you to do checks and stuff like that 10, 20 times faster than any traditional way of doing it. And it also removes all aspects of human error, because the proof is in the pudding, as they say. The point cloud, it's like they say a picture doesn't lie. Well, a point cloud doesn't lie either. It shows everything, and all the mistakes and all the omissions and all the additions. So just for a sheer confidence in a building, to have a digital twin that you can section and you can move around at free will and not have to spend any particular extra money is invaluable. And another application that we sort of use it for at the moment, obviously we work towards a main contractor. We aren't the main contractor. So in a particular building that we were doing in Woodworth, for example, we trialed using the point cloud system as a builder work verification tool. So for the basement level, where it was very, very heavily trafficked with built-in services, obviously, we spent quite a lot of time coordinating all of the builders' work holes with the main contractor, as they were concrete blockwork walls. So we spent quite a lot of time setting objects in for the openings, working with the brickies to get the holes in the right positions for all of their lintels, and quite a lot of time spent. And obviously it was a huge floor. It was probably the size of a football field. So to manually go around and check every wall probably would have took a couple of weeks to do. But I sent the squad in. At this stage, we had actually bought our own scanner now. We actually own our own equipment. We don't even use, as an MEP crowd, we now survey, we set out and we reality capture daily. But at that stage, I sent Daniel Lucas, our precision engineer, on site, and he was able to scan that entire basement in 1 day. It took me 2 hours to process the point cloud and insert the point cloud back into Revit. And in an instant, all of the drawings where we had elevated every wall with a detail, you could now see the point cloud ghosted over the top, and it became instantly apparent every single builder's work object that was correct or was wrong could just be circled in the drawings, and we literally just sent the same drawings back to the main contractor with a lot of bubble notes on them saying, this hole's not in the right place, that hole's been missed. And the benefit was that the guys that were doing the block work were only on the floor above. You know, if it had been left to the point of installation, those guys would have been long gone, paid away, trying to get those guys back to fix walls, move stuff, especially later on in the project when perhaps wall finishes were in and things like that. So straight away, within 2 days turnaround, we had a complete report for the main client saying, here's the problems on all your walls. And then we met in the middle, you know, where the hole was blatantly wrong. We got them back in to fix the hole. Where perhaps we could slide a wee bit and make that work. We were able to slide and make it work. So it got us really good standing with our client, who was the main contractor. They were completely blown away by it. They'd never even seen anything like it before. And within 2 to 3 days, I had a phone call from their top director asking me, who are your contacts within Leica? Please set us something up. So I got my friends at Leica another sale, another couple of machines went out that week, and they probably owe me a couple of pounds, I would say. But, you know, it's infectious as well. I find that people do look at it a wee bit. I'm not too sure about that. The cost of it is huge. Don't get me wrong. We bought a Leica BLK G2 and probably didn't get much change out of about 40,000 Great British pounds, which is probably 50 to 60,000 US dollars for you guys. So it's an immense amount of money to hand out. But when we circled back and we looked at all of the time savings on labour and materials and mistakes across maybe 20 jobs a year, the machine paid for itself probably in the first 6 months, I would say.
Yeah.
Purely in man hours and labour alone, and probably materials. Hard to gauge because we brought so many technologies in at the same time. We couldn't really evaluate any one of them to say, oh, that was a 10 times increase or that was a 20 times increase, but it has changed the entire workflow. So years ago, obviously, we would have struggled with as-built. I think everybody in the world struggles with as-built. It's just a terrible process to have to try and do. DFMA has taken quite a lot of that away, where we're prefabricating quite a lot of the stuff in the factory, and it's all controlled and designed and fabricated directly from the Revit model. Our Revit model is the one true digital federated twin that has all of the answers. The fact that all these technologies can actually complement each other as well. It's almost like pieces of a puzzle to come together, if you know what I mean. They all sort of complement each other, and when you see the impact, it actually has a huge impact on the team as well. You know, the team see all of these tools coming in, and it excites everyone. You know, we're using virtual reality, and we're now actually reality capturing as we go to replace the old markups that we used to receive, which used to be terrible. You used to get them at the last minute. You had maybe 2 weeks to do a 4-month job of tweaking the model, and we've trialed that on quite a few jobs now, where as soon as an area is first fixed and it's kind of at the point of signing off to start closing walls and ceiling, we'll go in and reality capture it, and then we'll have a point cloud for the whole space, and we can see exactly where all of the primary installations have happened. When we set the BLK in and we scan the room, you can see exactly what that is without any shadow of a doubt. So I'm lucky that I work with a very young company and very forward-thinking company, but quite a lot of the men and women that we employ on the sites aren't young. They're older generation, and they can be quite sort of, I don't really know about this, I'm a bit shocked about this, but what I tend to do is I go to the site and I'll meet them and I'll show them it and I'll explain it to them and give it to them in a layman's terms. It's very easy to get blinded by the sense of it and not actually see the value of the system. You know, there's a lot of different vendors and a lot of different software people, and it's almost a lot of noise in the industry that you kind of have to sift through. And that's not to say that what I've chosen is right for everybody. It's probably not. You know, there's a lot of different vendors out there who offer fantastic kit, and they're probably all good for different reasons. You know, an architect will want to use that technology than us in built-in services, for example. So I think that's key to it all, knowing what your use case is for it and finding the correct channel to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think a few things you said, great. There are so many options of what technologies are out there. That's part of our hope is, you know, through some of the education we do, whether through podcasts or conferences, trying to help people have a spot to go learn about them and hear what other people are doing. Because over the last 10 years, I think it's really expanded from how many hardware and software and process options there are. Back a long time ago, there was only one or two options, right? Now it's like there's 20, and they all do different things, and they're all different speeds, and they're all different costs. And so I think, the more that we can do as people that have been in it for a while, sharing some of those learnings and the headaches it'll help guide some of the industry, which I always say, I truly believe, the more that we help each other, it's really the rising tide lifts all boats, right? The more that we help the industry successfully use these tools and learn the benefits and share the case studies, it helps everybody have information to, utilize as they're building a department or they're trying to sell a client or, in any of the above. And if they're not in it yet, what you said as well, right? Don't go rush out and just buy the first thing. Like, make sure you get some insight from people who are going to give you some true unbiased, recommendations, and then either collaborate with someone or rent one. Or I have seen a lot of people rush out. They get excited to buy one tool and they're like, that was the wrong tool. Now it's sitting on the shelf, or we didn't realize how much work it was going to be, and we didn't have the team to support it or train. Or so I think a lot of companies come up to that point in the road of, how do we integrate this? Do we build a whole team around it? Do we find people to work with? And I think some people can get overwhelmed by the amount of decisions you do have to make to get it integrated and really change your business process.
Yeah, you have to always remember it's a workflow, it's a methodology. Don't tie yourself down to any one particular vendor, because they're all great. Don't get me wrong, they are all great. They're all very much of a much. Don't get bogged down on thinking I have to go Leica, I have to go Trimble, I have to go Faro. It doesn't really matter. The overarching workflow of it is the same regardless. You use a piece of equipment and a piece of software to generate a point cloud, and that's the A, B, C of it, and it's how you use that point cloud then downstream in your particular workflows. If it's for DFMA, it becomes your backdrop, and it lets you see intricate design and lets you get rid of all the second guessing and the question marks. For construction in itself, it allows built-in tolerance removal, as I said. And for me, it really is the key for successful as-builts and really taking the pain out of that whole process. It has worked very well for us so far. Scaling it is also becoming an issue for us now, and that it's almost like an exponential curve. It started in Kane's and everyone heard about it, and then it was just an explosion and everybody wanted Daniel at once. We need to scan this, we need to scan that. And what we've also started seeing even more recently this year, it's starting to become a contractual obligation for us as a company. So our main tier one contractors here we are now working for aren't satisfied with the traditional 2D CAD as built. They want actual physical proof and evidence that when you say there's 3 pipes dropping behind that wall, where exactly are they? Are they here or there or there? Do you know what I mean? We have started a few of the jobs now where we have to. We've no other choice. So fortunately, I was about 7 or 8 years ahead of the curve and seen this coming. So we were well versed. And for me, as I said, everyone is different and every company in the world is different. What's right for Kane's is not right for other people. So we made the conscious decision to physically go and buy a machine and train all of the staff in its use, simply because we couldn't get any partner companies to work with that we trusted as such. And the one company that we did find, they had like a 9-week waiting list. So we just couldn't, whilst we were happy working with them, those guys were fantastic. We just couldn't get them. We were waiting in the queue, and they were working for some bigger clients and much bigger projects that we couldn't try and pull rank or anything. It was just, we made the decision several years ago, right, let's just do it in-house. And like, that's a big decision for an MEP company. We aren't surveyors at all, but we just fell into it. The icon system is another thing that I'm immensely proud of doing, scanning the building and getting that backdrop of insanely accuracy. And then we spent a lot of time working on the Revit models to make our Revit models super accurate, one-to-one representation. And then off the back of that, the VR and the AR systems kind of helped use that and make that a reality. So I have an analogy for digital construction that I use everywhere with everyone, and I liken the whole process to a 3-legged stool. And for me, the whole digital construction process is a three-legged stool, and there's three legs that are equally important to each other. And without any of the three, the whole thing falls over. The first one is building tolerance and using reality capture to remove building tolerance. So whether it's an old building that's been standing for 50, 60 years or a brand new building that's simply just erected yesterday, we scan every building to make sure that what we are walking into is fully understood and all building tolerance is reduced to absolute zero. So that's the first leg. The second leg is the BIM model itself, the Revit model. It has to be the full, complete picture. There's no point just drawing ducts and pipes floating in the ether down a corridor. You have to model all of the bracketry, all of the clips, every bit of steelwork that goes in, right down to the very screw, nut and bolts in all of our frames that we're building. Because we fabricate out in the factory, we actually draw every component, every right angle bracket, every screw, nut, washer is modelled to its intricacy in the digital model. So the second leg of the stool is your Revit model. It has to be a masterpiece and have all of the information in it. Then the final leg of the stool is measurement on site, precision measurement. So how can you go to all that effort of understanding the building, making your Revit model amazing, to have guys go out and start measuring with measuring tapes and snapping chalk lines and working all the tolerance that you've got rid of in the first two legs reappear in the third leg. So that's where we developed the set and out system from the Leica Icon. So I have a friend, Matt, who worked for Hexagon for a long time. He was one of their technology guys here in the UK, probably one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my entire life. And he was the key for me of all this technology and reality capture. He had been a technology guy for Hexagon for a number of years, and I rang him and I said to Matt, how does a steel erector get the steel stanchions exactly where it's meant to be? Surely that's not measured by hand. And he said, no, they use Leica Icon. So of course I said, right, grab your machine, bring it to our office, show me. So again, he brought it in the office and he was spotting out ceiling tiles and lights in one of the offices. And I said to him, Matt, I need to be able to set probably 1,000 of these points out a day. How can I do that if someone's standing on the tablet of the Icon choosing individual stakeout points can still make a mistake because he could still click the wrong point? How do I take that away? I want to automate all of that. And that's where I started reverse engineering the Icon system and actually come up with there was actually a function within Icon where you could actually place a coordinate point in the model. And then all of those points can be collated into a list and then sent across to this tablet. And then the tablet can just set them out automatically with the robotic total station. So I started looking at that and I said to Hexagon, that they had actually discontinued the software because no one used it in the world. Everyone was just using the tablet. So I spent about 3 months automating the entire process of being able to place these points in the Revit model using Dynamo automatically. So basically, I have scripted a code and a Dynamo script that basically you just click a button and it analyzes everything that's on a floor and understands what category it is and assigns a point to it, either vertically above it on the ceiling or on the floor, exactly where it sits. And these color-coded points become a colored dot-to-dot on site, so that whenever we go onto a site, we actually change the entire order of sequence of build as well on our sites as a test with one of our main contractors. Normally, I don't know about over the USA, I'm sure it's exactly the same, but if a floor is cast, once the props come down, the guys doing the walls, the chippies as we call them, are straight in and they build the rat's maze of walls and they put one board on one side. For a plumber and a spark and the electrical guys, that's a nightmare because we have now just entered a maze to do work. So every time you want to move, you've got to lift your toolbox, you're walking between rooms, you're measuring off walls as a datum that perhaps are wrong. And then everything that we measure off the walls is then wrong. So we decided to turn this entire thing on its head. We said to one of our tier 1 contractors, how about we try this? Once the props come down, let us in first. We'll take the total station Icon machine and we'll pepper the underside of the slab with all of these coloured points, signifying a light on a ceiling or a smoke head or central changes of direction of ductwork and cable tray, for example, and all of the goalpost hires. So we can now put probably 1,500 points onto a floor in one day, automated from Revit with no human error, exactly where it's supposed to be, nothing missed, nothing left out. and the machine can measure it out to millimeter accuracy on site. Even if the concrete is deviating, the machine can actually figure out the difference in the Z plane and give you the correct point and adjust itself. So it was space age stuff. Where it's like, what is this? This is crazy. So again, the first week that we went in, Daniel Lucas did it in a day. I thought it maybe would have took him 2 or 3 days. He did it in a day. He brought it back and said that was so easy. That was simple. Then we let the first fix plumbers and sparks in, and we were able to first fix 80% of our services without a single wall or a single reference point, an empty concrete structure with every piece of MEP installed, tested, signed off. And then we let the chippies come in, as we call them. And those guys then were able to put all the walls in. And the difference was that normally all of those people would be tripping over each other, falling over each other, in each other's way. We separated the trades so that we got a run for a week at the floor, and them guys got a run for a week. And it basically would have took us, we reckoned, approximately 8 weeks to fix out an entire first floor. We did it in a week.
Yeah, those are some big changes in process and big results, you know, and that's taking it that step further, right? Like you said, not a lot of projects today are still just getting the benefit of scanning the building to help with design. The more that we look at how can these technologies really impact the full life cycle of construction or of a project, you know, I think that is where we're seeing some change now. And I think that people in the industry are, you know, even from the owner side or the GC side, as opposed to just a trade looking at how do we use it for ourselves, I think we're at that point now. The industry is starting to see, okay, wait a minute. Some of our contractors do this and some don't. How do we make sure that each project or each owner or each, whoever's in charge of this effort, how do we make sure that these technologies are helping the whole process and the whole life cycle instead of everybody doing their own? You know, up till recent, I think it's been far more the volume that everyone's kind of doing their own thing and the tool is for them. And I think that we are starting to see that change. You know, 10 years ago, I don't think there were really many RFPs or requests for proposals that dictated you had to use the technologies. And we're seeing that transition now of like, okay, there's enough benefit. This is a must. It's not a for fun anymore.
Yeah, I've seen that change very much so in the last 10 years. You know, it used to be very much poker. When you were building the building, everyone sat with their cards and they were very scared to help each other. Or, you know, everyone was very self-centered and only really worried about their own install. But that doesn't look at the bigger picture. You know, they were cutting off their nose to spite their face in quite a lot of the instances. I've seen quite the collaboration effect of BIM and all these technologies. The federation of the model in the center of the table is an important thing now. You know, 20 years ago when I started, everyone just did their drawings, slapped it in, and by the grace of God, the building was built, and no one ever understood how it ever got built. And I'm sure quite a lot of companies didn't make the money they were hoping to make, and probably put a lot of people off the industry because it's stressful. You know, I was a construction manager for a number of years, and when things go right on a site, it's fantastic. You know, it's great. You love it and you love your job. But when things start to go wrong, it can break a lot of people. You know, and obviously construction's the biggest trade for men worldwide, and a lot of men end up just not hacking it. You know what I mean? So it's anything for me that simplifies the process, brings everybody together for a common cause is good. And I always share our point clouds with everyone. You know, if I'm talking to an architect or I'm talking to the structural engineers and they say, how are you even seeing that? I'm like, oh, I've got a point cloud on it. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I'll say that to you. I'll stick it on the cloud. I'll do whatever, you know. And I find by having that attitude myself with other, it bleeds it from them. It comes back, you know, whereas 20 years ago, everyone was kind of fighting their own battles, whereas now everyone kind of understands that we're all working towards one end goal here. It is constructing this building for the end client. And I hope that it's just going to continue. Do you know what I mean? It's got better for me, certainly over the last 20 years. And I just hope that's the way it is in the rest of the industry across the whole world.
Yep. I want to ask now, I think we've dug in quite a bit to use and kind of the change and adoption you've seen in projects. It sounds like you've used quite a few different types of technologies. What's a current interest, for you? What is something that is maybe newer in adoption or looking to scale or grow? Obviously, BIM sounds like it's been there for quite some time, and normal and scanning and growth. What's new? What's upcoming for you?
Well, obviously, I spent the first 15 years really mastering the Revit side of it, the digital construction side, building robust systems, building the digital construction team that worked for me and producing amazing models. But what I found that we accelerated the point and then it kind of flatlined because the people on site just weren't getting the technologies. They weren't using it. They weren't using BIM 360. They were still running about sites with paper drawings and hand markups. And so for the next few years, once I sort of mastered Revit and got the team in place and was happy with the output from the digital team, I kind of then turned my focus to the operational side of the business and said, right, all of these people that are on the sites are unaware of all of these massive tips and tools and tricks that I've come up with. So it's not going to be a success unless the people are also on board. And I learned that very quickly. So the next few years was basically just going to sites, showing the technologies, implementing it more, and trying to sell it to the wider audience within Kane. But as I said, luckily that everyone loves it and loves the technology and it can see the benefit of it and can use it. The most recent technology that we've implemented is augmented reality, AR. Obviously, we had spent quite a bit of time looking at reality capture, looking at the precision setting out, and we had really became pioneers in virtual reality within design. I've good friends in Autodesk and the XR team. I'm good friends with Gabe Paez, the head of XR at Autodesk. So I was a very early adopter of XR. We've really pushed the boat with that technology. And if you look on my LinkedIn, you'll see one of the most recent posts I did there where it was kind of a culmination of all of these technologies, where I went to a site that we had prefabricated. We had scanned the building. We had prefabricated everything that was in this room. It was set out using the total station technology to millimeter accurate. Then I walked on with the augmented reality on an iPad and basically videoed the entire room. I'm going to say everything was exactly where it was meant to be. I mean, everything, even the clips holding the pipes screwed to the walls were exactly where we had set it in the model. And that's a group effort from everyone. Do you know what I mean? I can't take any credit for that at all. That is everybody that's involved, from the fabricators in the factory to the delivery guys bringing it to site, to the logistics guys, to the men and women on the ground putting it together, all of our QA team. Kane's is a big family and a big group of people, and I'm immensely proud to work with them all. And I'm very, very grateful that they even listened to you in the first place, because listen, I'm just Gary from Belfast. I'm just a guy from a very small town here in Northern Ireland, and it seems to be that my ideas are gaining traction all over the world at the minute. It's phenomenal for me. It's very humbling as well.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's fun to be on the journey, and over the last the time frame really that you mentioned you really started in this, there was not a lot of people doing this back then, and so to be on that journey, to watch not only your own journey but also it being, that's the time frame of the whole industry changing, seeing different people in different construction firms or engineering companies around the world that have a very similar story, a very similar time frame, and getting to this point now, it's becoming very well known. The technologies are becoming higher demanded, and part of why I love, trying to share these stories and build this community of people that are all focused on the same thing is there are still challenges with growth. There are still companies and different industries that aren't fully adopted yet. So trying to get people on board with where things are going in digital, where it is now. Another big one that gets talked about a lot is kind of labor shortage, right? And again, I know this may be different around the world or in different countries or states, but there's a lack of current education opportunities for people to just, what schools are turning out expert, laser scanning technicians or, scan to BIM modelers, or so much of what we're doing today has been a on the job, learn it as you go. And so the people that are very good at this are kind of limited. And so as we start seeing this demand grow and we're looking at, okay, this is what the last 10 years have looked like, and we think growth is going to happen even more in the next 10 years, what's that gap between, can we, perform it all? How do we start educating more people, inspiring people to find a job in this technology when they're considering schooling? I think there's a lot of impact we can make as a collective community, sharing these stories and encouraging people in, that will really help the entire industry as we look at the next 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I've traveled over Europe and I've contacts all over the world now in digital construction. I've been to America and did Autodesk University there a couple of years ago. So you are correct. It's a problem worldwide. It really is. There is a skill shortage, and I think it's more to do with the transformation of the skill requirement than anything. Because when you think about it, 20 or 30 years ago, buildings were built by engineers on the ground. There were time-served plumbers, there were time-served sparks, it was time-served builders who drew on decades of experience building buildings by hand, by eye. And then when all the digital tools started to come, the next generation to follow behind didn't have that level of expertise and didn't want to learn from the old guard either. They were all, we can do it 10 times better and 10 times faster. And the reality at that stage, that isn't. And it created this huge chasm of skills gap that I see. And now when you go to the schools and you go to the universities, for example, I do quite a lot of lecturing here in universities in Northern Ireland where I'm from. And it's the same thing. When I go into the universities, they're teaching the kids things that I learned 15 years ago that are completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
And then I walk into their class and go, here's what I'm doing. And they're like, what is this? Like, we're not even learning this. What is this?
Yeah.
And it's the same in Ulster University. I went up and did a rapid industry feedback forum, which is basically us industry leaders coming in and giving some feedback to the young aspiring architects. And obviously I'm an MEP guy, so I have no interest in the building design. I'm in there to roast them for their MEP. I'm in, where's your plumps, where's your boilers? And it was so disappointing for me when I walked in to look at these buildings that the students were working on, because it was an architectural student and a building services student. And the building that the architect had drawn was a lovely looking building, don't get me wrong, it was a nice model. But when you actually drilled into it, there was no allowance for risers, there was no allowance in the ceiling voids for building services. There was a linen storage that would have held half the linen in Dublin, and a plant room that was 4 meters by 1, so when I asked the students, who's your counterpart on the building services side? And they were like, oh, it's such and such. And I was like, are they drawing a Revit model? And it's like, no, they're just setting us Excel spreadsheets of square meter areas. And I'm going, how does that even work? And then I went straight to the teachers and the course room and, guys, you are almost 20 years behind the industry. What are you doing? Like, we cannot find people. And you actually can't do a course for MEP coordination. I can't go to any school or university across the whole UK and learn how to coordinate complex building services MEP stuff. Everyone who does it falls into it somehow or other. I went the design route and bit of practicality and just had that flair for it. But like the team who work for me, all the guys and girls who work for me, none of them are engineers. None of them have a degree. Some of them were working in retail. Some of them were working in hospitality. I kind of just fell into it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's a problem. And that's why I am a STEM ambassador. That's why I go around all the schools and the universities and give them my expertise, give them the time, do lectures, give them our actual models to say, here's a highly complex building services model. This is the benchmark. This is what you should be aspiring to. Not a Excel spreadsheet with a couple of square meters on it.
Yeah.
You should be producing this. And that's how I do it. Lead by example. That's how you can talk and talk till the cows come home. But if you can't walk the walk, you're wasting your time. You have to be able to show as well as tell. Do you know what I mean? There's too many people in the industry at the minute who talk the talk, but they can't walk the walk. They've never produced a model. They've never done Kobe. They've never worked with reality capture technology, and they're critiquing people and saying, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. And that's where I come in and go, well, where's your evidence? Where's your...
Yeah.
So
Show me.
Show me, yeah, show me. It's as simple as that, you know. Too many bluffers and too many salesmen, too many snake oil men, I think, in the industry as well. If we could get away from that a wee bit, I think that would help everybody worldwide too. You know, there's too many people professing that their system is the best when we shouldn't be looking at the technology vendors. We should be looking at the technology as a workflow, as a mindset. It doesn't matter if you use Faro or you use Leica or you use anybody else. The result is the same. You might have a slightly different point cloud depending on the setup and what you're looking for, but that's down to you as a company. You know, someone drawing the external of a building will need crisp point clouds, whereas someone that's just doing a rough scan to BIM on the internal can handle a much lower resolution BLK scan. It's understanding what you need and how to apply it really is the thing.
Yeah. Well, it's great to hear some of the thoughts and efforts that you're doing with the schools, and it's really nice to find more people that do that, and that's some of my hope. You know, even with as we've seen some of these needs, we said, you know, we need to pull together people who are like-minded in this and work together to support each other to create material, to even whether it be guidelines of how to use different technologies or case studies to take back and educate people, or this is where we created these committees organizations where we said, there's so many people who feel the same way. How can we, as a community of people, multiply each other's efforts? You know, it's a lot of work for one company to do all of the training and all of, you know, go visit the schools. And my hope, like you're saying, is, you know, weed out the people that still have walls up, that don't want to share, that don't want to talk. It's like, if we as a community pull together all the people who do share this vision and want to help and want to grow, we can help each other multiply these efforts by combining our efforts on creating that material that can be used when you go to a school and talk. You know, what's a shared industry, you know, document you can hand out that will explain these? I don't know, but let's make one together.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I made up flyers to go to all the local schools in the area because we were having so much problems finding people. The university graduates are terrible because they come out with a chip on their shoulder, like they're owed something, they know everything and they know nothing, no harm them. So we actually rewinded back and went to school leavers. We actually thought, right, we'll go all the way back and we'll take ones from school and we'll do that. So I made up a few flyers that were basically, it showed a PlayStation controller and it was like, if you like to use this, you could be doing this and making money, you know, in a very just, why sit and play this for nothing when you can, you know, if you like Minecraft, you like The Sims, you like doing that kind of game, why not do it as your job and get paid and be successful? You know what I mean? A lot of kids don't even understand what digital construction is. The schools don't teach it. I always go into the classrooms and I say to the kids, who can tell me what construction is? And all the hands go up. And then you say, who can tell me what digital construction is? And it's silence in the room. No one even knows what it is. They're all saying, no idea. And then when I show them it on the screen, they're like, wow, can't wait to see this. But like, it should be the teachers doing this. It should be the lecturers doing this, you know. And as Kanes, we do apprenticeships, we do schools, you know, we bring a lot of the local schools into our factory to show them the office, all the technology we use, give them a go in the VR, you know, try and spark a bit of interest. And it seems to be working well. I have one young fella, Jack Gray, he works for me. He left school at 16. Unfortunately, Jack wasn't able to do exams. He just lost his head. But he's a brilliant wee boy. He's very, very good. And he's took to the digital construction like a duck to water. And he's fantastic. He's very, very good. And he's only 19 now, 20. Or he came to me when he was 16. So I've developed him up. And another guy who works for me, Shay Domigan, he's been with me a long time now, nearly a decade. Same thing, you know, not from an engineering background, struggled in school to do exams, but very, very smart, just can't seem to put it out in paper. And he is now he's a senior quality BIM manager in Kanes now, from leaving school with absolutely no qualifications, you know, applied himself well, has the right attitude, and drunk it all up like a sponge and didn't let the fact that he flunked out of school affect him. So I always say to all the young ones that I work with and talk to, don't be afraid of failure. That's the biggest thing I could ever tell anybody. You know, I've made so many mistakes in my career, and every one of them is as important to me as the successes that I've enjoyed, because it's been a learning curve the whole way, and every day is a learning day for me. I don't ever sit in my laurels and think that I know it all. Definitely not. You know, I love to learn and I love to meet people from all over the world, and as you say, be part of that community in the middle, and give back to all of the people that I've learned from over the years. That's what I hope to do, at least.
Yeah, and as you just said with those 2 hires you talked about, it is what's exciting about this industry is these are not, these are not small opportunities. Like the impact that these technologies make across so many industries, straight in construction, but also in actual survey work, in forensics, in entertainment, in visual effects. Like some of the same tools are applied across so many industries. And the fact that schools are not the ones producing people to do this, and it's just kind of on the job training, and it's not like other industries where there is an overload of applicants, right? Like, schools produce today so many programmers and developers to go in and work for the social companies, or graphic design. It's been around forever. There's so many of them, and so the difficulty it takes to grow a very good career in some of those things where there's a massive amount of people is very challenging. This is an industry that is, even though the technology has been around for a while, as the demand grows and nobody's producing it, you can step out of school, right? Like you're saying, with no experience. And if you find a role, someone who will bring you in an internship, in just a few years experience, you're like manager experience already, because in comparison to the amount of people available to come in and do it, you now have lots of experience. You can go from nothing to having a wonderful career very quickly because of that demand growth.
There is, it's phenomenal. And as you say, there's so much overlap across lots of different industries for reality capture technology. I know there's a company here in the UK, you may or may not have heard of them. They're called Rivr, R-I-V-R, which stands for Reality in Virtual Reality. And I know the guy that owns it, Alex, and he's a lovely guy. And those guys basically do like VR training. So they produce this massive big black chest with 15 Oculus headsets in it. And they go on to sites and they do like forensics and they do fire investigations. So they actually go and equip the fire service with all the technology to be able to go in and forensically scan fire places so that they can actually do their investigations later in the point cloud and not on the actual scene. And they also do it with the police service as well, where they attend. Well, obviously they don't do the scanning. They enable the companies to have the technology. So another one that showed me was for the police on the roads for road traffic collisions. They're out scanning the scene of the accident and recording that and clearing it really quickly. There's 10 years ago, that road would have been closed for a day while they measured everything and photographed it all. They literally go on there and stick a scanner on and they scan it within an hour and it's all cleared, it's away, and the road's open again. So like, if you were to master this technology of reality capture, there are so many paths that you can actually follow with it as well, in entertainment, in games design, in filmmaking, in construction, and there's so many that even if you just learn how to use the technology and you do construction for a while and you're like, I can't be bothered with that, walking around wet building sites and being freezing, you can very easily sidestep into arts, into filmmaking, into any of the other industries worldwide that now use reality capture. It's used in so many different industries that it's actually hard to believe.
Yep. Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to see the growth, and the diversity of application. Well, I've got a couple more questions I want to throw at you. So, one, again, we've talked about a lot of the adoption. I'd love to hear the first thing that comes to mind with you on, even as good as you've become with it and how much you guys have been using it. What are some of the first challenges that come to mind that you're having now, whether it be data silos or accuracies or devices, or like what are some of the current challenges when it comes to the technologies for you?
Probably the people will be the first one. Anything new is always looked at with a hint of sort of not too sure about that. So trying to get everybody on board would be the first problem, and obviously trying to get the director to put his hand in his pocket and pay the money would have been the first problem. But the adoption of the technology would probably be the hardest thing, and then understanding how to use it and when to use it is another one. You could scan a building every day for forever and get very little usage out of that data, and conversely, you might not scan an area enough to get the required data you need from it. So understanding your own company's workflows, how do you apply the technology and when to apply the technology is also a key thing to understand. You can really over-egg it and under-egg it at the same time. So really figuring that out. And then obviously the technology, you know, what's the best vendor to go for? What's the best software package to use? Even just the technicalities of it, what's setting on the machine. Do we crank it right up and produce a 60 gigabyte point cloud for a single room, or do we turn it down for a big area and lose half the detail? So that in itself really is the first few weeks of stumbling blocks. I think we made that mistake with the RTC 360 that we got. We cranked her up to full welt, and we were scanning corridors and rooms, and we were producing point clouds with like 7 or 8 billion points for a single corridor.
Yeah.
And the guys at Leica were going, "Oh, that's too much. You need to turn that down." So just finding your feet really with it for the first wee while. I know certainly for all the technology companies that I wanted to try, I tortured them. I told them I wanted extended software licenses, demos. I wanted time with the machines. You know, a week's trial is not enough. A lot of companies will say, yeah, we'll throw you a scanner for a week and we'll give you a week's license of the software. You're never going to get an idea of what's involved in a week. So with every technology company that I approach, you know, they're saying to me, oh, we'll give you a week, we'll give you 2 weeks. And I say, if you want me to look at this, I need 2 months or I need 3 months. And some of them go, oh, I can't do that. And you say, right, well, adios then, I'll go to your competitor. But you'll find that a lot of companies will happily give you extended trials, will happily help you. You know, all my friends at Hexagon have been fantastic for me from day one, working with me. They weren't annoyed that I was trying to take their software apart or try and break it or do anything with it. They thought it was fantastic, you know. And they're now selling the capabilities of the system off the back of what we're doing. You know, we're now starting to see a lot more MVP companies worldwide start to pick up, setting out and starting to pick it up. And we were happy to do that. With Hexagon, I've went to a number of Hexagon events and spoke as a customer of theirs on their behalf, which works for them, works for the community as a whole, but it works for us as Kane as well, because it gets us in the spotlight, shows the industry that we're leaders in what we do. So it's a win-win for everybody, really, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any technologies that you're not yet using that you're excited about or looking forward to? AI obviously is the hot topic of the last year and a half, 2 years now. We aren't really using it for anything at the moment. I use it for quite a lot of things. I'm experimenting quite heavily with different AI engines for different tasks. Well, I've got one particular one where we can do automatic document checking. So, I mean, we produce an insane amount of documents in a week in Kane Group. In any 1 week, we could be producing 500 construction drawings and probably another 500 supplementary documents off the back of that, technical submittals, RFI. So we can now feed them into an AI machine, and we would, at the start of every project, we would create a document numbering protocol that would cover ISO 19650 or BS 1192, whatever the particular project is. And it has all of the different fields and all of the possibilities that can be. I used to have to give that to a human, and they would have had to spend half a day understanding that, and then would have spent 3 days checking 500 documents, whereas now I can hand the AI document numbering protocol, and I can hand it a zip file with 100 drawings in it, and it takes about 30 minutes and compiles me a full report of all the documents that passed, all the ones that failed, with a snapshot of here's exactly where it was wrong. And it won't be too long until we can actually just instruct that AI to just open Revit and correct them as well. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So AI is the biggest thing for me. I'm so excited about AI, especially in around what we're talking about, you know, reality capture and point clouds. A lot of work goes into registration and putting them together and putting the coordinates and stuff in.
a dream for me is that I just hand that to an AI now, and the AI will be able to magically do it. And obviously, it is already happening. I know that Hexagon have their reality studio up online, and you can literally it registers in the cloud for you now. So as long as your laptop can feed that up the cloud, all of the registration and cleaning and classification now happens in the cloud by AI. So to me, that's phenomenal. The AI is going to be the next big thing. It's going to be the next huge upset. I say it's an upset, but it's not an upset. It's just going to change how we do everything. And it's going to touch every single person in construction, from QSs to engineers on the ground to guys in the BIM team like me, document controllers, pre-con. Everybody is going to use AI. It's phenomenal. I think that's going to be the real big thing.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think the integration of AI, and even I guess not AI, but just the ways of using all the data that is being produced, and new software or platforms and enhancing that, and then the AI integration in. I've always said I think that those are the biggest areas for opportunity, right? We've seen a lot of innovation and growth with hardware options and scanner options. It's like we are now creating so much data. What else you do with that data, and getting the data easier to be used in more hands within a company or within a job site, I think is the next big area for growth. And then the thought of AI even enhancing what that means or how it happens, or it's been a fun journey watching the change the last 10 years. I think the next 10 are going to be quite wild.
And I think there'll be 30 years worth of changes compressed into a 10-year span. I really do think it's going to accelerate very quickly.
Yes. Yeah. The change is going so fast, and even this as a industry or these technologies, when you start seeing this much attention to it and demand for it, now you're getting more companies interested in getting into it and investing in it and building on the applications and creating, change. I think it's going to be a lot of advancement.
There's data obviously on the survey side, just raw number of point clouds and points. Some of the point clouds that we generate are huge. It could be 30 gigabytes for one floor of a 50 floor building. So it's terabytes of data for an entire building, and that's maybe only on one day, and we've scanned it every other week for 6 months. So it's terabytes and terabytes of data, and it's very hard to manage at the minute. We've actually had to create an entire server on our network to hold all of this data.
Yeah. And
we're also having to come up with a sort of workflow of management of that data. How long do we keep it? When do we destroy it? Do we keep a hard backup? Do we provide it to the client? It's still very unknown at the moment. No clients really asked us for any reality capture data, but it will not be long before you're expected to provide them with an as-built scan, say, of an entire building in support of your digital twin and in support of all your Kobe data, for example.
Yeah. I do think, and again, I don't know how this differs per country, but, so many of the documents you submit at the end of a project, right, are still line work, 2D. The movement of seeing those demands change to 3D and change to BIM and change to reality capture to support the BIM. I fully believe that is the future, that it will not be another 10 years, I don't think, before that starts to become just mandate, 90% of projects. Maybe there's still certain size or a price cutoff or something that they maybe don't get into it. But I do think that as these benefits are truly proven and the value is seen in it, it just makes sense it's going to move that direction.
And listen, like everything, once it becomes more prevalent, the cost of it will also start to come down. I'm sure once there's a lot more competition in the marketplace and there's more companies offering the services, as a whole, their prices will start to come down, and hopefully the hardware, same thing. It'll start to come down a wee bit more and become a bit more affordable. But as I said before, it's a sharp thing to take on this machine, but the benefits that it can bring you immediately, I'm going to say immediately, I mean immediately, is hard to actually quantify. And I would have loved to have been able to have an example for you to say, here's a monetary value, but it's not. You kind of have to just take my word for it as such. But it does, and it's infectious, as I said before. once you master one technology, you really start looking at all the other different technologies that are out there. It becomes amazing, what the possibilities of them all. And automation will be the next big thing. At the minute, it's humans walking around scanning, and we've already seen the ARC, the Boston Dynamics Spot Dog, that can be equipped with one of these scanners on its back. And obviously there's the BLK Fly, which is the drone version, which we can sort of send all, automated. There's a project here in Belfast. We've just actually had a very, very large transport hub constructed in the centre of Belfast. And there was actually a really, really old sewer line that ran the entire length of the site. It was a massive site. But there was no drawings of it. No one knew exactly where it went. They knew where it entered. So you could see the culvert opening on one side of the site, and you could see the culvert on the other side of the site. But how it got from A to B, no one knew. This thing is 150 years old or more. So they actually built a very small raft and set a scanner on the raft and sent the scanner down the river on the raft and scanned the entire inside of the structure from start to finish with 2 coordinate markers on each end. And then they were able to obviously export that and bring it into the Revit model. And then they were able to coordinate all of the new piles around this existing structure that couldn't be changed. So it's amazing. The robotic side of it's going to be really exciting in the next few years. Once we'll start seeing, I've already seen a Spot the Dog live on a site. I've already walked and walked on the site and seen the dog walking about. And obviously at the minute it's maybe a distraction for everyone because everyone's starting looking at it and going, what the hell is this thing? And but as it becomes normal and normalised, it'll just be another thing that you're used to seeing. We've already seen drones go into very tight spaces, as I said, places you couldn't send a human, for example. So it's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm a technologist. I love all this stuff. I'm a real geek for it all.
Yeah, same. What's your final piece of advice for the listeners?
I don't know. Don't be afraid of change. Quite a lot of people in the industry are afraid of change and afraid of new ideas and new workflows. And my advice to them is don't be afraid of it. Embrace change, embrace new methods of work. Don't sort of rest on your laurels that you think you have it all sussed out. There's always someone doing something better than you. So keep your ear to the ground and keep your eyes open and learn by example.
Awesome. I love that. Well, I thank you for coming on and sharing. This is, again, part of our goal, right? You're sharing with your local schools, and now you're stepping on to help share to our community. We hope to continue inspiring people to adopt change, to invest in and look at these technologies, how they impact, and hopefully we'll continue to build a better future together.
Yes, thank you. It's an amazing community that you're building, Matthew, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
Well, thank you very much again, and I'm sure it won't be the last time the community sees from you, so thank you guys for listening, and we will see you on the next one.